LFOs because it's all in here. If you want an LFO, just go grab classic LFO and then open this and then modulate your stuff with LFOs and then make your LFOs, and it's off to the side, nice and simple. That's where that's at. So there's new modulations which are going to make up for a lot of things that were taken away or from a plugin because they didn't just take features out of the devices. They have been integrated into the modulation section. And then, so yeah, for the sampler, there's nothing new going on here. We got this. This is something from Foley. But essentially what we've got is that, and versus like, you let go, it's gone. Because usually you had to pump this up. So it would go all the way through. Now, you can just switch it to one-shot mode. If you want there to be a release, you can just do this. Or you can take this off. For instant, so that way when you press the next button, it comes back right away. This is like crucial for drums in my opinion. And then what's nice is you can do this and then save as a default preset, which is new. So every time I open this freaking sampler, it's gonna have the exact settings I want, which is pretty cool. Maybe we'll use like something like, maybe this will be like our sound. Like, let's find a cool sound. We can loop. We're supposed to be able to. Oh yeah, you have a sample start change. There, and the loop's not working. Why isn't the loop working? Is it because I'm not on this? Yeah, okay. Sorry. Okay, this is their sound. We'll stick with this, and then we'll do stuff to it. So, also new, EQ5 Spectrum. Fairly accurate. When you first open it in the beta, it's going to start with post only. So if I do stuff, we'll see that. In my preference, I like both. So now when I go down, it doesn't go all screwy. That's cool. These are also less resilient to being pulled, so that's nice. They move a little more willingly, and then also again, default preset stuff, really nice. So, oops. Maybe we will ignore stuff over here, more or less, and go on to, like, the modulation. So, we have 4-stage. 4-stage is a... So, think of it as, like, Serum's LFO built in, essentially. So, this is, like, 4 beats. And you can set how many beats it's going to last for, depending on what you want. It has curve settings. You can change it to beats so it's synchronized, and you could get some like actual like accurate custom LFO modulation essentially at this point. Except I don't think you can have it set to repeat. So we can activate 4 There is no repeat option. So it's kind of just like a triggered, like, custom envelope, which is really, really cool. Aside from that, we have the ADSR and then the AHDSR. So they're the same thing, except one has hold and the other one doesn't. And hold being, like, the hold section, like this. Also, you can, if you... Oh yeah, you have curve editing in this one, and the other one does not. And then we have our audio sidechain, really cool plugin. You can have it take like audio of something and be reactive to it in that sense. So if I put it here, say like, I can play this at different velocities. What it will do is I can select, no wait, it should already be reacting. So yeah, it will react to the sampler sound now. So what I can do is have it modulate, say the like ratio of, not ratio, like anything. So this is now a reactive EQ. I've now just made a dynamic equalizer, kind of like a I've actually kind of made like a multiband compressor at this point, is what I've done. So that is freaking amazing. Like, because if you say you're boosting frequencies in somewhere, but you don't want them to be boosted when it's that frequency is specifically too strong, or the sound is louder, then it'll bring it down a bit, like root tone wise or something. Like if you're playing, if you have velocity taken into consideration, it's not going to take down that much root tone. Slam it, takes down more root tone, so that way it doesn't become like super obnoxious just because it's getting louder. So that's cool. You can also use it for sidechain if you set up triggers to it, and then it's like a really nice hidden sidechain for like a specific instrument or something. Like it takes 2 seconds to set it up. And then these even have default settings as well. Oh wait, does it? No. Okay, never mind. They don't. They don't have default settings. Ignore that. And then we have button, then buttons. So what these do is I'm gonna make an EQ that's on, and then when I press the button, it's gonna turn it off. If I go down, so that's cool. If you want it, so basically, it's just now a button, like a one press button. You can just go around button things, like, oh, I want this off or whatever. Automationable, autonomable, and then buttons is just 2 of them. Classic LFO. This is essentially the exact LFO that we had before, except the previous one was like its own device again, which is annoying because then you had to put like your EQ or whatever inside that LFO, and then now your LFO is like a device that you see. You don't actually natively see that, where now the LFO is just tucked to the side, and then anything it's affecting is now here. Cool. Though I think some I have some concerns with using this and then having, say, like another EQ. Can this LFO modulate this EQ? Like, it can't. So that's kind of interesting. I'm going to have to see how that goes. I think the workaround to that would be essentially, like, if I wanted to do that, I would need to make a chain, which I kind of wish would be updated. Then we take our EQs, put it in this chain, put the modulators on the chain, and then we can modulate both with the same one. That's how you would have to do that if you wanted an LFO to modulate multiple things. Or you could just copy and paste the LFO everywhere, and assuming it has resync settings, that wouldn't even be a problem to begin with. It just means you need more LFOs everywhere, and that's a little more micromanagement if you decide to make big changes, so yeah. So, again, in this modulation section, we've got expressions for obvious things like velocity, timbre, release, and pressure. And then we have HWCV in. Don't do modular stuff, so I'm not even going to talk about that. Key tracker. I think we know what a key tracker does. Key tracker, how, like, this is probably one of the best key tracking graphs I've ever seen in my life, because you can basically just do whatever you want that makes no coherent sense, and it just does it, and it doesn't argue with you about it. Like, if I want to make like a satanic pentagon, it's not going to judge me and tell me not to do that. I can't figure out how to do that though, and I don't know if I can add any more. What'd you do? Oh, now it's just relative. Okay. So yeah, this is my key tracking. And this is actually quite amazing, because look at this thing go. It's like, it's gonna totally follow this. Granted, it kind of ignored what I was going on with up in this line, but like, the point is, it's an amazing key tracker. The best in the industry, for sure. And then we've got LFO. This one's different from classic LFO. This one's just like your simple LFO. You can beat sync it if you want, but it has to be at 1 hertz. And then it has pluck or fade. Sorry, pluck and then fade. And then we've got form options now, which are basically double point acceleration differences in like an LFO. So that's interesting. If you want to use that, you can get like that shape or this shape. So now you can do that. And we have delay times and then fade-ins with the LFO, and then we have like depth essentially. And if you mess with the depth, then that little dot gets a little funny and starts to look like he's a bit drunk. But yeah. So that's that one. And then we have like a beat LFO. Did I miss that one? Yeah, we did. I'll go back to that one real quick. Beat LFO obviously just goes to the beat of the song. It's time synced, and then it has like things like shuffle options, like global shuffle up in this menu. Enable groove. And so the closer you get over here, the slower, and then over here is the faster. That's why they have a bigger note on the left and then smaller note on the right. Has same options as the other one. And then plus negative option. So they all have like minorly different functions. It's a preference thing or like situational. We have macros 4 and macro 1. So what they've done is essentially these don't macro like shit anymore. These don't do anything. Like, these are actually like useless. What you can do is, I guess, put like a knob. You can like make a gain knob for an EQ. This is what this is essentially is for now. In case you don't want to just drag around this stupid like digit, you want to have a knob for it. Here you go. You can have as many pages as you want. There's on-off buttons for this, and then like you can change your bell types. Apparently, if we go down to type, so we can change all our bell types here. Yeah, and we have like a remote controls editor. I don't know. Again, I don't do like tons and tons of like macroing and modulation stuff like this, because why would I need to? But we have a single knob macro now for macroing multiple things to one thing. And then we have a 4-point macro. What? Stop. Stop it. Delete. And then we have a 4-point macro, which is different. Not really. It's just 4 macro knobs. In case you're wondering, you can I don't know. I'm not going to say it's unlimited, because I'm pretty sure that's like a computer error to have unlimited of something in a DAW or like any program. That's why the max cache stack in RuneScape's like 4.6 bil because of JavaScript. But essentially, you can have many. Probably so many to the point that if you're running out of them, you have problems, and you should just start using chain then, I guess. So I'm going to assume like there's a solid 36 or something. Don't hold me to account to that. Just that's how many bands there are in the fab filter. Or no, there's not. There's like 32. And yeah, then we have math. So this gets advanced. We have multiplication, add, subtract, min, and max. So these are basically fancy macros that will operate in a certain way that I have not experimented with. But you can multiply. This is gonna go bad. And I max that out to 48, and I like move this 1%. It didn't do anything. It's not moving my bands. Oh. What? So is this like a depth? Oh. Okay, so on multiply, the left one is essentially the intensity, and then this is like the percentage, and then the one on the right's the intensity. Like, how intense should this be, like, based on that percentage? So you multiply these two knobs by each other. Add, if I move this, it does what it does. If I put this, then they add, and then get, like, super big. And then if I have on subtract, if I have this knob all the way up, this essentially will only act as a down no matter what I do. So at maximum it would be like this, and then I go down and it's down, and then reverse, and then if it's at 0 it goes like this. This is kind of interesting. And we have a minimum, so I'm assuming the right one will set the minimum, and then this will go to that minimum, sort of like the multiply one, except it does it at a constant rate. And then I guess if I set the minimum to negative, then it has to be that at least, and then I can add to it if I want. Okay. And then we have a max. So if that's the maximum down I can go, and then I can set the maximum up I can go. Or wait, no, the max, what? Alright, if you're going under, if you're trying to do stuff under, you should use this max, and if you're doing things above, you should use the minimum if you don't want to go up above that. Okay, interesting. And that's what that does. They're basically funky modulations. And then we have MIDI. Again, I don't work with MIDI, so I don't know. Just kidding. I don't know what this actually does to, like, any intense extent. I'm assuming it's related to analog things. Note sidechain. You can have, like, notes, essentially sidechain things if you want. So any note from something, like just a note, like I don't think, you could probably put like some sort of key tracker if you wanted, so it was a specific note, but with this, what it does is you will, if you want, you could turn it into a sidechain by maxing out the sustain and then adding like attack, and then every time you press this, what it will do is it will drop the envelope. It will make the whatever, like if I mod this if I mod this to like the output and then drag down the output, so it kind of looks like this is actually going after my pressure as well on the keyboard, which is interesting. This is kind of like, is it? Yeah, it is. It's okay. So if I set this to something else though, it should just trigger this with the envelope that you give it. If you select it as the device or the source sound. And then we have the mix knob, which is like 1, 2, 3, like mix knobs that work in 0 to 100 in case you want these. So this looks like a good panning knob, like A, B, or like something. And this could be like positive, negative, and you know, like that sort of thing. I missed that one. And we have randomizer, LFO, which does exactly what you might think it does. What? Okay, yeah. So it's just random, and then it has like feedback, smooth, and then speed. And then if it's related to, if you want it to be related to like BPM at all, then you can do that. And now this gets a little funky. We have select 4, different from macro 4. So this is 100%. This is 200, 300, 400. So essentially, you map this to something. And say I map this to this volume. This one to this volume. This one to this volume. This one to this volume. Super cool. So it's like not doing what a regular macro does, and I don't think you can actually do this with a regular macro. So it basically has 4 separate mix sections and then the next section is like a D mix for the other part. So it's like you can get some really nice, like, cool effects with this, as you can see. They like, it activates like certain macros when it reaches like 100% or 200%, and then they'll mix in while mixing out the previous macro essentially. Then we have the steps. So the steps works the same as steps function. It has like, do you want 2 or whatever? With some cool little light show here. And someone's probably gonna get a seizure from this. So it can go up to like 64, and you can like, you can randomize it all you want, and then you can macro to stuff and loop on, off, sync, free, make it free if you want, and then you can like invert it or like change the depth. Yeah, you can invert it, and yeah, that's cool. And now we'll go into vector 4 and 8, and so this is like the best understanding someone would get from this is if they took like advanced trigonometry in high school or university, probably university. So we have our graph. You remember this from high school. We have this graph, x, y. You have the x coordinate, and then you have the y. So the y coordinate is always codependent on the x coordinate, but the x coordinate is never dependent on the y coordinate. And you learn this stuff, and you have like y equals mx plus b. So like if you have like 1, so like every 1, so that means the slope is 1. So if your slope is 1, then you make 1x increase per y increase. Sorry, other way around. 1 y increase per x increase, because the y follows the x, and then the x just does whatever it wants. So you have slopes. So this would be like 1 slope, but then this would be 2 slope, and then so 2 slope would have like some go up like this. 1 slope goes directly 45, and a 1/2 would go like hit the center, like across like that kind of math, you know. So that's on x, y. So you can map things to the x and then to the y separately, and then you can get some cool modulations, you know, like standard x, y modulators. And then we go on to the, oh, this is gonna be so fun. Then we go on to, so yes, you learn this. Can you, oh, that's cool. You can even modulate it from this little square. And then we go, so like we have this, cool. And then we remember that we were taught about how this XY is in the top right corner of this 4-point graph. So this is like now a data plane, 2D data plane. So this is like the XY is in this corner now. And then over here is negative x and positive y. And then we have negative x, negative y, positive x. And this is how this works, right? Do you remember this? If not, you definitely remember this XY part. This was like the theoretical business behind it. And usually, like in my experience, like when I was in high school, they were like, oh yeah, you have this side and you have this side. And then that was like the basic math section, and then they never told you about these bottom sides so much, especially not this back corner. And then so this is how this modulates. So this is now going to modulate much different. So this, if I move, okay, so we have that. Okay, so the way these work, now is that this corner macro, the macros respond with their corners, and then essentially they work on a maximum. So if I move this, that will be the brightest one, that's the brightest one, that's the brightest one, essentially, etc. So along with that, if I put this in the top right corner, it's now going to do the complete opposite of this bottom one. Or no, it won't do it. So if as soon as you move it out of this zone, it stops. The macro will be at 0, and then it will start only macroing what's in this top right corner. But then when you get to the middle again, everything starts to react correspondingly. Okay, never mind. I don't think this... Okay, these will never reach true 0. These macros will never reach true 0 until you get to the complete opposite end. So now this is at 100%, this top right corner. This bottom one's at complete 0. And this top left one is not actually at complete 100%, but it's not actually at 0 either. And then same thing with the bottom right one. But relatively, the X is still making this higher than 0. So if you want something to be off, you essentially need to be in the opposite corner. This is how this works. And then now we get into the vector 8. And then vector 8 is stupidly complicated because vector 8 has now become a circular modulator, like a ring modulator to an extent, because now we have 8 points, so we have the same corners. So these top ones do the same as this corner, these corners here, except now we have a positive, like an X and Y consideration in here as well. So if when I move these around, we'll see all these little circles react. So all the other circles will react as well in relative to where this little dot is, this little P, the point on the graph. They will all react to it. So now this has more depth. However, when you look at it, the graph from this point of view, we're not talking about like radial functions. This graph was not. This was just like an XY, like 4-point thing. This is now a radial situation because I don't remember this, but you had like cosine, then you had like costan, then you had sine, then you had like sine tan or something. I forget exactly, but this is quadrant 1. Oops. This is quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, and they relate to like the triangle ratios on your calculator in high school that you might have never understood. And this is the description of a circle, and the way a wave function works essentially is they will visit these quadrants. If you have a sine wave being played, the sine wave is actually mathematically graphing through this sort of function here. But it will travel through these at different rates. So a sine wave, it would just be like a circle. Triangle wave would just do a circle. A sine wave would kind of do like slowly, like accelerated every time it turns, and that's what this is for. So this is like basically just a really cool high detail modulator at its finest. If you actually macro all these things, it'd be very complicated to use, very complicated to explain. But if you want to use it, you can use it, and it's fun. And you now have it, and as far as I know, like no other DAWs have that, so that's pretty unique. And that's all there is there, and that took forever to say. What's the time in the video? 45 minutes. Okay. Let's go ahead into the effects. Maybe I will separate these videos. I probably will.